Hey up, Poppy, you alright?
Hello and welcome to episode 8 of Relive the League. I'm Ben.
And I'm Mike.
And we continue to take you on a journey back in time, bringing you all the highlights that you need as we take you game week by game week through the 1992-93 Premier League season.
Yeah, and this week we've got our first tag-along, or as we like to say, a very, very special guest commentator. We've touched on it the past couple of weeks. If anybody is interested in joining us for an episode, get in touch via Twitter at PremStartsHQ. Today's guest, and our first ever guest, is the wonderful Jay Pearson, the writer, producer and presenter of the wonderful documentary The Story of Their Crew on YouTube. If you haven't seen it yet, please go and watch it. It's fantastic. And follow him on Twitter at Jimmy Cullen. Anything else from you, Ben?
Caught me off guard there. Not really. I can't think of anything.
No else from me. Do your thing. Say your line.
So let's go back in time then, Mike, and let's press that rewind button. Let's relive the league.
I'll see you there.
So to kick us off this week, we've got Crystal Palace at home to Oldham. Crystal Palace still looking for their first win at their home ground, sitting second from bottom in the league. They're taking on Oldham, who are also looking for their first away win. What sort of game do we have in store here, Mike?
Sounds a cracker, doesn't it?
Let's see.
Well, Palace line up with Nigel Martin in goal. In defence, John Humphrey, Eric Young, Lee Sinnott and Gareth Southgate. Then Jeff Thomas in midfield coming in for Chris Coleman, Simon Osborne and John Solarco. On the wings, we've got Paul Williams and Eddie McGoldrick, and up front, new signing Chris Armstrong. On the bench, Paul Held, Chris Coleman and George Ndar. For Oldham, unchanged again, John Holworth in goal, Steve Redmond, Richard Jobson, Neil Poynton, Gunnar Haller and Paul Bernard at the back. In midfield, Mike Milligan and Nick Henry, and three up front with Ian Marshall, Ian Olney and Graham Sharp. On the bench, John Keeley, Craig Fleming and Neil Adams. One thing's for certain, that's if you go to Boundary Park or any Oldham game this season, you're guaranteed goals. And it didn't take long for the first one today. After 19 minutes, the ball found itself with Gunnar Haller in the box and he played a calm ball across to Ian Olney, who fired home to make it 1-0 to Oldham. It stayed that way for a while until the 64th minute when Palace's new signings combined and Paul Williams nodded on for Chris Armstrong to fire home his first goal since his £1 million move from Millwall. And it didn't take long for the £1 million man to work the magic again. After a free kick was headed out, it found itself at the feet of John Solarco with a nice cross towards a back post, and there was Armstrong to make it 2-1 to Palace. The celebrations only lasted 10 minutes though. As always, Oldham piled on pressure and looked for as many goals as they can in a game, and after Paul Bernard's headed down, there was Graham Sharp to turn it home to make it 2-2.
So who needs that combination of Wright and Bright? We've got Chris Armstrong and Paul Williams.
It doesn't quite rhyme though, does it?
It doesn't, but when you've got Chris Armstrong bagging 2 goals in 2 minutes to make sure they get a point, not sure whether they deserved it or not. Oldham did play very well today, but points are shared, 1 point apiece. Both still looking for, well, Oldham on the road looking for their first win on the road, and Palace looking for their first win at Sellers Park. It was always going to be a draw, wasn't it?
Banker.
And next up, we have got the unbeaten Ipswich Town taking on the crazy gang, Wimbledon.
Ipswich line up with Craig Forrest in goal. In defence, Glenn Pennyfather, who's coming in for Paul Goddard, Neil Thompson, Phil Whelan, and Frank Yallop, who replaces Eddie Yowd. In midfield, Geraint Williams, Jason Dazelle, and Gavin Johnson, with John Walk behind diminutive, usually midfielder Mick Stockwell up front on his own. On the bench, Clive Baker, David Gregory, and Adam Tanner. Out for Wimbledon, Hans Sagers in goal, Roger Joseph, who comes in for Scott Fitzgerald, Dean Blackwell, John Scales, who comes in for Brian McAllister, and Warren Barton. In midfield, a second debut and a return for potentially the craziest member of the Crazy Gang, Vinnie Jones, who comes in for Laurie Sanchez, Robbie Earle, Terry Gibson, and Andy Clark. And up front, it's John Fashanu, Auga, and Dean Holdsworth. On the bench are Neil Sullivan, Scott Fitzgerald, and Paul Miller.
It didn't take long to get the action underway today. In fact, on the 19th minute, after a superb bit of long ball tennis, John Walk sent a massive header up the pitch. John Scales failed to deal with it, and there was makeshift striker Mick Stockwell to make it 1-0 to Ipswich.
Just short of the half-hour mark, Wimbledon got themselves back in the game after Teddy Gibson swung in a corner to the back stick. John Fashanu was there to head it back, and Dean Holdsworth equalised to make it 1-1. Into the second half then, and Neil Thompson picked up the ball in the left-back position, played a lovely 1-2 with Gavin Johnson, who continued his run. Thompson found him, and he headed on towards goal, looked up, saw Mick Stockwell at the back post, played it across. Stockwell was there to make it 2-1 to Ipswich.
Well, Ipswich still remain unbeaten after 8 Premier League matches. They thoroughly deserve their win today. The dynamic performance from Mickey Stockwell, man of the match without a shadow of a doubt. Well played, son. Joe Kinnear, the manager of Wimbledon, said after the game that his players were waiting for the offside whistle after Stockwell's second goal. And the referee had come out and apologised after the game. And he said he hadn't seen the linesman's flag. Make out what you want from that. Make out what you want from that. But Ipswich, take the win, take the 3 points. And next up, we've got Norwich taking on Chelsea. Now, the Norwich chairman, Robert Chase, has made a bit of a reputation for himself by making a healthy profit by selling players. Over the last 6 years, he's made £12 million. Now, 2 players that he sold in that time, Chelsea captain, Andy Townsend, and also goal machine, Robert Fleck, both in the lineup for Chelsea today. But Norwich, they won this reverse fixture back in August 2-1. They're sitting proudly at the top of the league. Let's see how they get on today.
Chelsea line up with under-fire goalkeeper Dave Besant in goal. At the back, David Lee, Mal Donaghy, and Anthony Barnes, who's coming in for Paul Elliott after, well, he had his knee exploded by Dean Saunders, pretty much. In midfield, Gareth Hall, Eddie Newton, and the returning Nigel Spackman, who, of course, left Chelsea in 1987 to join Liverpool. is signed again from Rangers, replacing, well, the very apt Vinnie Jones, leaving to join the crazy gang at Wimbledon. Andy Townsend, of course, former Norwich captain, and Dennis Wise complete the midfield, with former Norwich striker Robert Fleck and Mick Harford up front. On the bench, Nick Colgan, Graham Stewart and John Spencer. For Norwich, Brian Gunn in goal, as always, Rob Newman at the back, with John Paulston coming in for Ian Butterworth, Mark Bowen, Ian Culverhouse. In midfield, Jeremy Goss, Gary Megson, Ian Crook, and my favourite footballer, David Phillips. Mark Robbins is back in for Lee Power, and Chris Sutton up front. On the bench, Mark Walton, Colin Woodthorpe, and Darryl Such. It were touch and go. If we're going to get a game on today, Norwich got stuck in gridlock traffic and arrived 15 minutes before the game. No warm-up, straight into the changing room, socks on, shorts on, out for the game. Let's see how they get on. In typical fashion, Dave Besant had a rush of blood to the head, but untypically, it worked out for once. He hoofed the ball forward and it found itself with Robert Fleck, who gave the ball to Mick Harford, passed the ball to Wise with one touch back to Fleck, and then Fleck was in on goal against his old team, then decided he didn't want to score against them and let Mick Harford do it anyway. 1-0 Chelsea. And in the 29th minute, Dave Besant whacked a free kick forward. It was headed out well, but found itself with Jeremy Goss, who tried to clear it, but only got it about 2 yards. Townsend intercepted it, went to Dennis Wise, who played a delicious chip and found the runner Townsend, who fired home to make it 2-0 to Chelsea. Mike Walker must have had some stern words at half-time. A minute after the break, Ian Crook centred the ball, Mark Robbins with the tamest volley, and Dave Besant did Dave Besant things. In the 74th minute, Chelsea tried to apply some pressure, but Norwich showed some great counter-attacking football down the right, and the ball found itself with Rob Newman out on the right. He pushed over the defender, laid one across, and there was Mark Robbins again to make it 2-2. That's 6 goals in 6 games now for the Man United reject. And then 10 minutes from the end, Jeremy Goss found the ball in the middle of the park and went on a forward run, found the best player in the league, David Phillips, who did his trademark cut inside onto his right foot. And, well, he didn't fire home this time. He tamely shot, and Dave Besant basically scored his second goal for Norwich of the game. 3-2 to Norwich, an unbelievable comeback, been 2-0 down at half-time.
Well, Mike, that game had everything. That game for me is, without a shadow of a doubt, my favourite game of the season so far. Mick Harford scoring early on. Norwich, like you said, they weren't there, they weren't warmed up, they weren't ready. They got punished. Former player Andy Townsend scores to take 2-0 to Chelsea. But then, my player of the season so far, Mark Robbins. I love the man. What a god. After half-time, he scores 2 goals to get them back into the game. And then passing the ball back over to you, Mike. David Phillips, your player of the season so far, without a shadow of a doubt.
Best player in the league.
10 minutes, in your opinion, 10 minutes ago, he bags the winner. Between Robbins and Phillips this season, they have scored 11 goals between them. What a partnership they've got going on. And yeah, Norwich, top of the league. Chelsea, struggling, mid-table, fodder. Norwich, just carry on. You're doing absolute wonders. This title is yours. Believe in yourselves, Norwich. Believe in yourselves. Next up, we've got Sheffield Wednesday travelling to the City Ground to take on Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest at rock bottom of the table. They've currently lost their last 5 games. It's dreadful for them. But today they face Sheffield Wednesday, who are riddled with injuries. Let's see how it goes.
Forest line up with Mark Crossley in goal, Steve Chettle, Carl Tyler, Stuart Pearce and Brian Laws at the back, with a midfield of Gary Crosby, Roy Keane, Scott Gemmell and Kingsley Black, who's moved to Arsenal, didn't materialise, coming in for Toddy Orlickson, with Nigel Clough behind Gary Bannister up front. On the bench, Andy Marriott, Ray McKinnon and Lee Glover. And for Sheffield Wednesday, Chris Woods in goal. Peter Shirtliff coming in for the injured Roland Nielsen. Paul Warhurst, Nigel Worthington, and Viv Anderson, who comes in for the injured Nigel Pearson. In midfield, Graham Hyde, Carlton Palmer, John Harkes, who's in for Gordon Watson, Chris Waddle, Chris Bart-Williams, and up front on his own is new arrival Mark Wright, who of course is in for Paul Williams, who, well, they just swapped a striker with Crystal Palace. On the bench, Kevin Pressman, Danny Wilson, and Gordon Watson. Trevor Francis is leading an army of the walking wounded at Wednesday at the minute. He's got himself Mark Brighton. Paul Williams has gone the other way to Palace. But it was today's makeshift striker, defender Paul Warhurst, that nearly broke the deadlock today after a great cross from Bright. They're hopefully going to be able to replace the goals of the injured David Hurst up front, and with Mark Bright they've got a good chance. But playing a centre-half up front, it's not ideal, is it? Forest had the chances, mainly through the only striker they've got and the trialist replacing Sheringham, Gary Bannister, but didn't trouble Chris Woods there. They did have a great opportunity from a set piece. Stuart Pearce was over it, a 300-yard run up. He looked to absolutely rangoon it, but he curled it round the wall and it nearly snuck in the post. If all else fails and you don't know who to turn to, give the ball to your left back. He's been watching that youngster Giggs over at Man United and it's been paying off. He's gone through a marauding run, some great build-up play into the box to make it 1-0 and straight at Chris Woods. Unlucky Psycho, keep plugging away, you nearly had it then. Five minutes ago before the break, Chris Waddle went on one of his famous jinky runs and played a phenomenal through ball for makeshift striker and centre-half Paul Warhurst to make it 1-0 to Sheffield Wednesday. Into the second half, and John Harkes put a throw in and Chris Bart-Williams controlled it in the box straight into the path of Graham Hyde, who smashed home to make it 2-0 against a run of play. You know things are bad at Forest when they're getting beat by a side with this many injuries, a defender up front and a fella who's as surprised to score as Hyde was there. With 2 minutes to go, after some great play on the left, Stuart Pearce whipped in a cross which was handily dealt with, 3 times by Viv Anderson. Throw into Forest. Chris Woods giving it a big fist there as well. Anyway, the throw-in comes in, the ball finds itself back at Pearce, who whipped a ball in, found Gary Bannister's head to make it 2-1. He's on trial, but he in half, bagging the goals for him so far. Not quite replacing Sheringham, not quite getting the points, but definitely the respect of the Forest fans.
Well, Gary Bannister tried his best to get Forest back into this, but it was too little too late for them. Brian Clough is on his worst run as a manager. 6 consecutive defeats now for Forest. They are rock bottom of the table. Are things going to get any better for them? And next up we have got Southampton taking on Queen's Park Rangers. When these two sides met earlier in the season, Southampton took the lead, but they couldn't hold on to it, losing 3-1 in the end. Let's see if they can play it a lot better and get some sort of revenge today.
The Saints line up with Tim Flowers in goal, Kevin Moore, the superb Ken Moncal, Francis Benali and Jason Dodd at the back. In midfield, Terry Erler, Neil Maddison and Matt Letizia. Up front, Perry Groves, David Speedy and Ian Dowie. On the bench are Ian Andrews, Jeff Kenner and Nicky Banger. For QPR, Jan Steshkan in goal, Alan McDonald, Darren Peacock, Clive Wilson at the back. With Simon Barker, Justin Channing, who's coming in for David Bardsley, who was injured for playing for England in midweek against Spain, Andy Impey, Ray Wilkins and Andy Sinton in midfield. And up front, Les Ferdinand and, the super Gary Penrice coming in for Dennis Bailey. Get me to the bookies now. QPR are going to win 8-0. On the bench, Tony Roberts, Danny Maddox and Ian Holloway. The reverse fixture at Loftus Road this season was an absolute rip snorter, and this one started off exactly the same in fact, with Matt Letizia giving Southampton the lead. 1-0
They held the lead until the second half, and then they did something you should never do in football, and that's give Andy Sinton a free kick on the edge of the box. He put it right in the postage stamp. 1-1. Then in the 58th minute, we had a real hen's teeth moment. Defensive midfielder Justin Channing was played in by Les Ferdinand to score only his 5th goal for QPR since making his debut in 1986. Southampton will be gutted with themselves. They could have got the 2nd win of the season. They dominated the first half. Poor second half.
And that's now twice Southampton have faced QPR this season. And that's now twice Southampton have taken the lead early doors through Matt Letizia against QPR this season. And that's now twice Southampton have thrown away a lead against QPR this season. QPR in the top 4. They're going well. And at Main Road today, we have got Manchester City taking on their bogey team, Middlesbrough. Middlesbrough are looking for their 4th win over Man City in only 9 months. Go on the Borough.
City line up with Tony Coton in goal, a back 4, a Keith Curle, Michel Vonk, Terry Phelan and Ian Brightwell. In midfield, manager Peter Reid picks himself, Gary Flitcroft, Fitzroy Simpson and Rick Holden, and up front, David White and Mike Sherry. On the bench, Martin Margetson, Andy Hill and Adi Mike. And for Middlesbrough, Brian Horn in goal, Alan Kernahan, Derek White, Jimmy Phillips and Chris Morris at the back, with a midfield of Andy Peake and Robbie Mustoe. Tommy Wright and John Hendry on the wings, Hendry coming in for Bernie Slaven, and up front, Paul Wilkinson and Willie Faulkner. On the bench are Ian Ironside, Jonathan Gittens and Bernie Slaven. Not much to report from Main Road today, apart from another one for your quizzes and your statisticians. The first own goal by an outfield player in the Premier League as Gary Flitcroft accidentally turned in Jimmy Phillips' corner and it ended 1-0 Borough.
And Middlesbrough have done it. That's a 4th victory over Man City in only 9 months. And it was also their first win at Main Road in 43 years. Middlesbrough found their first victory away from home this season.
They have been brilliant, haven't they?
Oh, they have been absolutely outstanding. They're the surprise package for me this season. Keep going, Borough. Keep it going. And now we've got Manchester United travelling to Goodison Park to take on Everton. And Man United, on the 2nd game of the season, the first ever Premier League game played at Old Trafford, were absolutely embarrassed when they were defeated by Everton 3-0. But since then, Alex Ferguson has cracked the whip, he's got his Red Devils into shape, and they've actually won the last 4 games without conceding a single goal. Can they get the revenge today? They need to.
And Everton line up with Neville Southall in goal. A back 5 of Alan Harper, Gary Ablett, Dave Watson, Mark Ward and Andy Hinchcliffe. 2 in the middle with John Eberl and Barry Horn. And up front, Robert Varzicka, who scored potentially goal of the season at Old Trafford earlier in the year. Peter Beardsley and Mo Johnston. All 3 scoring at Old Trafford, if you remember. On the bench, Jason Caton, Matt Jackson and Peter Beagrie. For United, Peter Schmeichel in goal, Steve Bruce, Gary Pallister, Clayton Blackmore and Dennis Irwin at the back, with Paul Ince, Darren Ferguson, Andrei Kanchelskis and Ryan Giggs in the middle. And up front, Brian McClare and Mark Hughes. On the bench, Gary Walsh, Lee Martin and Rod Wallace's brother Danny.
On United's hunt for revenge, it took them till the half-hour mark. And Mark Hughes played through Brian McClare, the Everton defence, stood and watched, and McClare coolly slotted past Southall to make it 1-0. Then, into the second half, late on the 76th minute, United were piling on the pressure, and then Kanchelskis was decked in the box by Southall. Southall can't believe it. It's a penalty to United. Who's going to take it, though, with all the stars they've got in the team? How about, I don't know, the fellow who scored the Poachers' instant goal last week? Steve Bruce, ladies and gentlemen, 2-0 to Man United. They've got the revenge. Steve Bruce has got 2 in 2. Is he the most informed striker in the Premier League? And there, for some reason, an interview with Peter Schmeichel, we're keeping that in. just so we can say there's a young Peter Schmeichel. What a hairstyle, what a goalkeeper.
Man United, they have done it. They got the revenge today. 2-0 winners over Everton. Clearly they have improved a lot since the start of the season, how they started off. They have now got 5 straight victories, all achieved without conceding a single goal. Well done, Fergie. It pains me to say it, but you're looking very strong at the minute, lads.
Steve Bruce for England, up front. Now, over to Bramall Lane, where our special guest commentator Jay Pearson brings you the action.
We're at Bramall Lane for Sheffield United against Liverpool, and the second time these sides have met already this season. Liverpool won the reverse fixture at Anfield last month 2-1, but Sheffield United will take a little bit of confidence out of this one because they did beat Liverpool 2-0 in the same fixture last season. Sheffield have got 1 home win this season against Manchester United, and they've only got 1 point in their last 6 games. Liverpool, though, no away wins so far this season. The best they managed is draws against Leeds and Ipswich, and it's their worst start for 28 years. As far as the team news goes, for Sheffield United, Tom Cowan comes in for David Barnes. Glyn Hodges is out of the side this week for Adrian Littlejohn, and Alan Cork makes way for Dane Whitehouse. For Liverpool then, Steve Nicol comes into the side for Rob Jones, Ronnie Rosenthal replaces Steve McManaman, Jan Molby makes way for Paul Stewart, and Mark Walters is in for Dean Saunders, who this week finally completed his £2.5 million move to Aston Villa after weeks of speculation. Saunders was in and out of the Liverpool side. His last performance for Liverpool was actually a pretty decent performance against Chelsea after scoring in that win. Bit of a cloud though, he did practically end Paul Elliott's season, so we'll see how Elliott gets on. But Dean Saunders moves to Aston Villa to join former Liverpool players Ray Houghton and Steve Staunton. On to the game then. The big moment of the game came after only 4 minutes. Tracy with a long punt downfield, with Brian Dean doing what he does best, making a nuisance of himself with a great flick on to Littlejohn, who gleefully whacks it over a stranded David James. But for that isn't a thing of the future either. There was no enjoyment at all watching a disjointed Liverpool side. Nicol and Wright were 6s and 7s at the back. They were harried by Dean and Littlejohn as if he were in Sherwood Forest taking taxes from the rich and giving to the poor. And poor is what you would call this Liverpool performance. Liverpool did have their chances, although the first one came after an absolute awful 28 minutes. In particular, Stewart, though, showed that he can fire with either foot as his free kick brought the best out of Tracy. But Liverpool were never a worry for United, who deserved the win for their second home game of the season and second win in total. For Liverpool, though, they still have travel sickness and sit on 9 points from 8 games. However, there may be a glimmer of hope for Souness as he's targeted Danish centre-back Torben Picknick to shore up his defence. That transfer is expected to be completed this week. He won the Euros with Denmark in the summer, and Souness has been impressed by him, so I'm sure he'll make a big impact at Anfield. Lord knows they need it.
And the Super Sunday game this week, we see Aston Villa travelling to the fortress that is Elland Road to take on the champions of England, Leeds United, who are currently on a 26-game unbeaten run at home.
And Leeds line up with John Lukic in goal, Chris Fairclough, Chris White, John Newsom and David Batty in defence. In midfield, Gary McAllister, Gordon Strachan, who comes in for Tony DeRigo, Scott Sellers making his debut after his move from Blackburn Rovers, replacing Rod Wallace, and Gary Speed, with Eric Cantona behind Lee Chapman up front. On the bench, Mervyn Day, Steve Hodge and David Rokas. And for Villa, Nigel Spink in goal, a back four of Sean Teal, Paul McGrath, Steve Staunton and Earl Barrett. In midfield, Gary Parker, Kevin Richardson and Ray Houghton. Up front, Steve Froggatt, Dalian Atkinson, and making his debut after the move from Liverpool, Dean Saunders replacing Dwight York. On the bench, Les Seeley, Ugo Ekiog and Dwight York. Leeds got the action underway early today with a Gary McAllister free kick towards the back post. Gary Speed with the loopiest of looping headers. Lee Chapman beat Steve Staunton in the air but couldn't beat Nigel Spink at the near post. Not too long later, right wing back David Batty gave the ball to John Newsom, who whacked the ball forward, and Sean Teal did a lovely back header right onto the right foot, so Lee Chapman 20 yards out, straight at Nigel Spink, 0-0. one man who could make a difference was Villa's in-form box-to-box superstar Gary Parker. And in the 19th minute, Gary Speed dillied on the ball and Ray Houghton played a 1-2 off Earl Barrett's John Thomas and ran clear down the right wing, looked up and found Mr. Box-to-Box Office Gary Parker, who smashed home to make it 1-0 to Villa. Leeds tried everything they could to get back into the game before half-time, including a gymnastics show. The first one comes courtesy of Gary McAllister with a 1-2 with Eric Cantona, and then for some reason decides a volley which goes right over the bar. Could have chested that down in my opinion. A short while later, Batty was played up down the right, whips a ball in, and there was Cantona to complete the White Rose gymnastics event. Straight at Nigel Spink. 1-0. Then, in the second half, David Batty went on a marauding run through the centre, played a 1-1 with Cantona and played in Chapman, who coolly slots home to make it 1-1. Except the linesman had his flag up. 1-0 to Villa still. Then, with 5 minutes to go after a cross came in, a lovely flick on by Frenchman Cantona, straight to the feet of Diego Maradona's best friend Steve Hodge to equalise and make it 1-1. A bittersweet one for Villa, with the man accused of deserting a sinking ship when he quit Villa in 1987, getting the point for Leeds.
Points were shared today at Ellen Road, carrying on that unbeaten streak for Leeds United, making it 27 unbeaten at home. The champions, they haven't got that form that they had last season. They've out of the 8 games that they have played so far, they have conceded 13 goals now. They need to start improving if they want to keep hold of that title, really. And to finish the week, on Monday Night Football, we have got Coventry City at home to Tottenham Hotspur.
And Coventry line up with Steve Grizovic in goal, Andy Pearce, Kenny Sansom, Peter Atherton, who's coming in for Stuart Robson, and Brian Burrows at the back. 2 in midfield with Lee Hurst and Lloyd McGrath, and 4 attackers with Robert Rosario, Kevin Gallagher, John Williams, and Peter and Love. On the bench, Jonathan Gull, Phil Babb, and Terry Fleming. For Tottenham, Ian Walker in goal, Neil Ruddock comes back in for Dave Tuttle as captain, Jason Cundy, Pat Vanden Hauwe and Stone Cold Dean Austin. In midfield, Andy Gray, Vinnie Samways, Paul Allen and Darren Anderton. And up front, Gordon Jury and Teddy Sheringham. On the bench are Eric Torsvet, Andy Turner and Steve Sedgwick. A cracking game in store today for Sky's Monday Night Football, a game which was billed as the John Williams-Pat Vanden Hauwe battle with the fastest striker in the Football League against potentially, or as Andy Gray puts it, the toughest defender in the Football League. Coventry's play today was, well, basically who fit long to target man Robert Rosario, and it was his link-up play with John Williams that gave us the first chance of the game today. Rosario broke free and used that pace of John Williams, and a great intervention by today's Tottenham captain Neil Ruddock. He's wound up his Amazon Prime, he's fired up, he wants the victory today. Corner to Coventry. And from the resulting Lee Hurst corner, the ball came straight to Andy Pearce, who volleyed with the outside of his right boot. No trouble for Ian Walker. 0-0. Coventry kept on plugging away, but there was no way through Neil Ruddock and Tottenham's defence today. A few minutes later, Kevin Gallagher tried his best on the right and beat Pat Vanden Hauwe, whipped a ball in, but there was stone cold Dean Austin to deal with it this time. And that's the bottom line. And after half an hour, we finally had something of note. Andy Gray got a throw-in on the right. The ball was a little bit moist, it seems. He took his time. He tried to... he tricked everyone. Gave the ball back to Stone Cold Dean Austin, who whipped the ball across. And there was Neil Razor Ruddock to make it 1-0 to Tottenham. But, no. What's going on here? I think Teddy Sheringham got within a 1 foot vicinity of the Coventry defender, and for some reason it was disallowed. Unlucky Neil. 2 minutes later we had some box-to-box play which signified how this game was really. No way through from Andy Pearce with Teddy Sheringham there. Then a lovely little pass up And then McGrath whacks one forward, sends Kevin Gallagher clear down the wing. He didn't look it at all, but he was given offside. Unbelievably, Coventry caught offside 8 times in this first half already. Cundy and Ruddock marshalling that back four with military precision. Then on the stroke of half-time, Coventry should have taken the lead, really. After a great defensive header by Ruddock keeping the ball off McGrath, it found itself with Williams, who played the ball back to McGrath, who didn't really show much confidence at all. That might have something to do with the fact that Paul Allen kicked a hole through his skull 5 minutes earlier and didn't even get booked. Into the second half then, and Peter Unlove got the ball on the left, put a dangerous cross in, a great block by Vinnie Samways. The ball found itself with Brian Burrows to put the ball in, and there was Ruddock again. There's no way you're getting through him today, Coventry. What a defender, what a captain. Again, at the other end, Tottenham kept trying. Paul Allen on the left here, but just couldn't get through the defence. One thing they could do, though, is look to the bench where they had 17-year-old wonder kid Andy Turner warming up. With his pace and his drive, could make a real difference. Before that could happen, though, Tottenham himself found them in a bit of a jumble in midfield. The ball found itself with Peter Unlove, who smacked the ball straight into Vanden Hau's shin. It went up in the air, and John Williams looped a header somehow, and it's found its way over Ian Walker. Probably the only way they were going to break the deadlock today. He's happy. He even did one of them accidental, I'm going to do a flip, I don't know what to do, and then found out he couldn't do one. 1-0 to Coventry. The fans are ecstatic. Look at that jumper. The two key men highlighted at the start of the game with a key role to play in the goal. Vanden Hau with an accidental superb assist, and then John Williams with an accidental superb header. Did he mean it? Didn't he mean it? One thing's for sure, Ian Walker, well, he was nowhere near it. And then it was time to bring speedster Turner on, with current signing who hasn't really hit the ground running, fresh-faced Darren Anderson coming off. And let's just take a moment to admire that shirt. That's got to be one of the best away shirts in football history. Anyway, Turner gets the ball straight away, puts in a dangerous cross. It's a bit too deep. And I say cross then? Cross I meant. But it was well dealt with by Peter Atherton. If you had to have a dictionary definition of no-nonsense centre, have to be a picture of Peter Atherton in the dictionary. And then with 15 minutes to go, Sheringham finally got his big chance. After the corner was whipped in, he met it with a superb diving header, but just couldn't hit the target. Then, not long later, the tension started spilling over, and after diminutive winger Peter Unlove got involved in a Barney with massive Neil Ruddock. And look, there you are, appearance from a fresh-faced young linesman called Mike Riley. Ruddock couldn't believe it. How was he giving a free kick away there? It's a tussle. It's shoulder to shoulder. Well, Neil, you nearly sent him over the stand. He's only 5'3". Then, at the other end, there was some more argy-bargy as Andy Gray tried to beat John Williams down the wing. John Williams didn't like that he tried to be faster than him. He said, I'm the fastest footballer in the league, so he wellied a ball at him. Kevin Gallagher came in, calmed it all down. Then John Williams was booked. He hit him in the face. Let's have a look. All that for a poke, John. Come on now. That could have gone. That could have gone right in his little fella's, couldn't it? One player who was never giving up was Andy Turner. He kept trying to create chances, kept popping balls in the box, kept being dealt with by Steve Igrizovic. And that's it. Finished. 1-0 to Coventry in one of the best examples of end-to-end football you'll see. Neil Ruddock had a phenomenal game, Spurs' captain. Pat Vanden Hau wants nothing to do with it. He's just walking off. Cundy's always a gentleman. What a game. I think that's Williams' 5th goal of the season. What a signing he's been. Look how happy the fans are. He knows what his crowd are like. Look at him. Look at the Coventry Massive. They're flying high. They're loving this Premier League.
What a great example that was of end-to-end football. Brilliant defensive performances by both teams. Neil Ruddock, definitely the standout player there in defence for Tottenham today. Coventry take all 3 points, keeping them second in the table, 1 point off Norwich. Keep going, Coventry, doing very well this season, flying high.
And that brings us to the end of episode 8 of Read of the League. Sorry for the delay in getting this one out. We had family business to attend to and a bit of man flu on my side. Let's go to the tables. Norwich sitting pretty at the top of the league. 19 points after 8 games. You've got to say that, well, at the minute, they're looking like the best side. Blackburn have played a game less, 2 points behind. They're the team that's going to push them. But at the minute, Coventry having a blinding season. Man United going up the table like a rocket. Middlesbrough going great guns. What a fantastic start to this Premier League season we've got. Leeds and Arsenal sitting mid-table. And onto the bottom half.
Yeah, well, we've got Nottingham Forest stuck at the bottom of the table. 1 win all season. Not playing very well, are they, at the minute? We've got Crystal Palace just above them. The draws are helping them out. Still yet to win this season. And then you look a little bit higher up, you've got Spursy Tottenham and Liverpool with their, well, it's the worst start to the season for a long time. Yeah, that's basically how we're looking at the bottom half. All the bad teams at the bottom.
Let's go on to the top scorers then. We have changed the colour of the font on this because one of our older viewers got in touch and said it was hard to read. So hopefully this is a bit more easy on an old man's eye. Sitting pretty at the top of the goal-scoring league is the superb David White with 7 goals. He's having an absolute phenomenal season. Every single one of his goals have been fantastic.
Yeah.
John Williams pushed himself onto 5 goals today. Paul Wilkinson still on 5. He had a week off from scoring. Mark Robbins firing up the list with 2 goals as well.
Go on, Robbo.
In great company with Alan Shearer and Eric Cantona. So, yeah, that's it for this week. Thanks again to Jay for the guest appearance. That was absolutely phenomenal, mate, and we're very, very grateful for that. Any other business from you, Ben?
No, that's it. We'll get the episode 9 out for this Sunday as normal. We'll try to get back on track with it. Obviously, time restrictions, you know, we'll do our best. And yeah, that's it. Over and out.
See you later.